I think if you look at AI, it is Clayton Christensen's nightmare come true.
Yeah.
It's you need to reinvent your company, and you need to do it now.
Okay, Harry, we're starting our podcast, second episode. Again, Future Proof podcast with myself, Anthony Batt, and my colleague.
Harry Demont, how
And
are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm in sunny Southern California. Just took the dogs for the walk, and it's perfect out. And
Always sunny in LA.
it's warm. It's warm. It's nice. It's pleasant. It's just like it felt like taking the dogs for a walk. Like was a perfect stroll. So I'm feeling good. And it's a little bit later for you, right?
Yeah, sun went down a while ago here, but it was a it was a it was kind of a tough morning, like 40s and misting, and by the end of the day, shorts and a t-shirt outdoors, high 60s. Really nice. Trees are coming into bloom. Forsythia's out. It's really nice looking flowers out right now. So
Yeah.
yeah, pretty pleasant day here. All in all, and I think we're in for a pretty good weekend. So it should be a nice Easter weekend for people.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, like I said, I'm already munching Easter weekend chocolate, which is not good for me because I can't stop eating it. But I can't also stop, making agent harnesses, checking out AI products and working with Claude Code um, same sort of loop. I go to the candy jar and I shouldn't have another one is the same thing. I'm going back to do some more coding with Claude Code. And I know that you've been mastering Cowork and you've bought a Mac Mini. So let's just jump in there. Let's start with the Mac Mini purchase and where we're going and what we're going to build with it.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
doing the same.
yeah, I think we're, yes. I was going to say, there it is, the
Yep.
Mini, the Mac Mini. Uh, Hard to get. They're back ordered. I managed to grab the single one that they had in South Norwalk, Connecticut. There were none in Greenwich, Connecticut. So, all the places around me, there was like one, so I took it. Uh, you know, do everything pretty much on Claude Cowork these days. And so, definitely want to have that appliance sitting there and running on my desktop so I don't have to, run up and down with my computer all the time. And I can work with my laptop from anywhere and just, get right in there and have it run the full computer effectively. So I'm sort of excited to do that. On the other hand, I also, have set up enough computers. I'm sort of like, okay, that's going to take me a couple hours, but
Yeah,
at
it
at
does.
the end of it all, it will be it'll be great. And I think both of us have the same idea, which is it will be nice to have a shared set of skills, a shared set of MD files that we can pull from consistently across what we do at CoAI, what we do at at the sort of the larger outsider labs,
Hmm.
for any other work that we do, and whether we're working in co-work, which tends to be my less technical background showing through,
Works
or
great.
Claude Code for you, where you have some stuff set up. Um, it all is kind of the same. And quite frankly, you read enough AI Twitter and you see what guys like Karpathy are doing, and you sort of realize keeping all these files, out of Claude and, in a drive somewhere in a folder system, whether it's Obsidian or whether it's, Google Drive or just on your hard drive, whatever, probably is a smarter way to go anyway. And so I think we'll be sort of setting all of that up. And
Yeah, we're going to try some various different methods. I think, yeah. So if we're going to go with the Obsidian front end, back end, we're going to have to. I think they offer some syncing services, but we also might do some other our own syncing systems. So I've been thinking about our syncing over SSH, but that might need some tuning for us on each other's routers. We could also use something in the middle where we're both grabbing the latest from a middle, like a Git kind of repo. So we're tracking that. So we're going to get that set up. And I think the reason why that's important is because we're s- we're we're orchestrating how, an agentic team would work together, right? Like, setting up, everyone's talking about agents and agentic workflows, but all those workflows are run by humans, and all that work product is for humans. And I think what's missing is that interface. Even though Claude Cowork is a quite a good interface, you're still dealing with file systems, you're still dealing with other stuff that you need to get. And I feel like eventually there'll be companies, and we might crack that code, where you're writing a bit of a wrapper that allows you to sort of interact with all of the Cowork or Apple or the Claude code work you're doing, so that you can kind of get access to it. And so, I don't we don't see I see people writing about workflows and automation, but like not like the front end dashboard of it all. You know what I mean? And how do you get two people, five people, all synced, all doing the same thing, with their own nuances, but all producing the same result, and being able to publish it or share it with their team, et cetera. And I think that's what we're going to embark on. And I feel like I'd like to have, you're going to have your Mac Mini, and I'm going to have my Mac Mini. But I think ultimately what we're going to want is a shared appliance in the cloud that we can just be doing all this on, and working on this. So that's the adventure we're on right now, and we're going to report back on our progress here on Future Proof. But
I'd say, given where we are, we should just put a Mac Mini in Kansas City or something like
yeah,
that,
yeah,
and
exactly.
be shared with one long wire. It's like
Exactly.
cutting the tin can wire in half.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, it's funny. We wrote yesterday about a quite frankly, a bunch of different things, and that we sort of, managed to string together. I think pretty well. I thought so, but I'm heavily biased by the fact that I wrote it. But I said that the future is really bright as long as you really like yourself or you're not afraid to be alone,
Right.
because all of this stuff is very much one human centric. And like you said, there hasn't been a sort of a central repository or a meeting spot where teams can work well together. And you sort of go back this early in the week to a post that came out from Jack Dorsey and Roloff Botha about Block. We wrote about when Block, initially cut a bunch of heads, and the stock was up like 25%. It was, the first all-agentic company, and their margins were going to go through the roof. And but they really went through it, I think, well, talking about the future of what this looks like and how these companies really are going to be very agentic, and you're going to have individuals working there who have, sort of one of three duties, and and they're going to be managing agents. The problem I see is, while I sort of have an interface with Claude Cowork to manage agents and what comes back, what I don't have is that next orchestration layer to sort of report what those agents do, and and talk to my colleague who's also managing 10
Right.
agents, or getting the workflow of my agents over to their agents, because my output might be their input
Exactly.
depending on what they're doing. I do think that Paperclip makes a good effort at doing that. Um, Sort of, zero employee company, just set up the org chart and the agents and let them run. But I think the early tests that I've read about all say the same thing, which is it works, kind of, sort of. It makes progress, but at some point, you really do have to have a human in the loop. Um, and I, quite frankly, I think for what we do as, co-AI, I'll just use that because obviously I know the workflow, and the workflow
And
because we've both done it.
it's our
Um,
petri dish. This is how
yeah,
we're we're training an agentic we're training to build an agentic company by doing it, not reading about it, which is the real powerful note that we want, sort of like, to make sure everyone's aware of. It's like we're not reading about it, we're doing it.
yeah, it's I think it's easy to opine until you actually have to do it. And then you
Correct.
do it, and then your opinions, I think, get a lot better. And the real question is, can you get enough reps in terms of trying this? I think we're lucky. We're small. There's two of
Yeah.
us. We're certainly not getting rich off this. This is more labor of love at this point than it is a big business. Not trying to build a unicorn out of co-AI. And sure, it'd be nice, but we understand the business model well enough to know that that's probably not going to be the case. So you have to really do it because you're thinking about how do I train myself.
We're in the
Eh,
dojo.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the question is, do you get enough reps in the dojo that you can then take that and take it to a much bigger company that's already in existence and say, here's what you need to do to change this organization completely. And we can say that with great certainty because we've done it. And we know that if you have 6 agents, you're okay. But the second that you get to 8, you're drowning. And if you try to do 10, you're not going to do a good job monitoring any of the 10. Um, we just don't know that yet. And I don't think anyone really knows that.
Yeah, I think where I've been at for quite a while, and someone who used to manage a lot of shell scripts that orchestrated a lot of like what we used to call in the old Unix days, like systems administration. We had lots of cron jobs running. We had lots of script A piping data, its output. We used a thing called pipe the data to another input. We used programs like xargs that would, run and output it back into the input. This has all been done significantly in the Unix world for decades. What we haven't been able to do is really have something that actually generates, conversational data, which is like what an LLM's doing in a workspace, and do things that are quite unique to this moment in time. And so to me, it's if the models just ice froze cold, never changed a bit, we would still have a orchestration problem for decades to try to orchestrate how do humans interact with things that are able to generate data that has actual salience to it, and then pipe that onto the next agent or human that then does work on it and then pipes it back to an agent. You know what I mean? It just this
Yeah.
loop is just happening, and it's all orchestration, and orchestration is going to take time, and it's going to be very specific to the way your company works. So nothing, there's no out of the box. Look at Salesforce. Look what a pile that is. You know what I mean? Everyone's typing all this crap into all these systems. You got to spend tens of thousands of dollars for administrators, tens of thousands of dollars to like, everything. And it's like, for what? Not everyone, you end up having to become a Salesforce shop rather than becoming like, this is my company. This is the way I want to run it. And this software works for me. That's the where we're heading. And so I really think it's going to be a very powerful place. And I think what you wrote about and what Jack was talking about was, how do you build a business with humans there working with software that's going to be quite profoundly, like, I don't want to say intelligent, but very sort of like capable of doing something that you don't have to do as a human. And how that's just that's just a completely different business. And what I'd like to
Yeah.
just say before you comment is, I think executives and businesses are thinking about AI as if it was something you roll out like Salesforce. And I think that that's where you got to pump the brakes and say, no, this isn't a technology you're rolling out. This is a complete mind shift change for your executive team. And what your executive team needs to do is work with this stuff daily, get your insights, and then figure out how to sort of orchestrate a business to take advantage of it. I'll pause there and let you comment.
Yeah, no, that's a mouthful. And
Sorry.
it's all look. No, it's all. There's a lot of ideas in there, and they're all correct in my opinion. So uh, we've been forced into the interface that they've given us, not necessarily the interface that we want, not necessarily the interface that's best for the system that we're using today. And I I I wrote the other day about the Artemis going up, and
Yes,
it was a
it's a good
very
article.
um, it was a very personal article to some degree because I was sitting there watching it with my daughter, who is an actual rocket scientist working on satellite systems. She works at Lockheed Martin. Lockheed's biggest space contract is is that whole system, is the whole the whole, lunar system. And so, this is, obviously a huge day for those guys, to see that thing go up and work. And, I mean, the funny thing is, of course, the toilet breaks. And then last night, Microsoft Outlook breaks because somehow they have Surface tablets with Microsoft Outlook on them up in space. So we have our first, IT call, for a Microsoft problem in space,
I didn't no,
which,
I did not catch that. Did that
oh
really
yeah,
happen?
yeah, that happened overnight last night, and they were troubleshooting it this morning.
I
But
could just imagine someone saying, "Go into expert mode, go into advanced mode and click the button."
right,
Just like
exactly. And I think that, and I was sort of, inspired by the inside of that capsule and the inside of really, they had great videos of the Dragon capsule that SpaceX, used to bring people to the ISS a while back when that was going up. And but by the way, you got to give it to Elon. They have much better cameras and and video production than NASA. You think NASA would have better video than what they did. But the Dragon capsule was amazing, and what amazed me was it looked like the inside of a Tesla, right? And it was basically, I'm going to give you the information on these large screens that you need to do the job that you need to do right now, not 17 form fields to fill out because that's the way that someone designed it 14 years ago at Salesforce. Um,
that
and
Salesforce is I mean, it's just it was if you sorry to interrupt your thinking, but if you go to Salesforce, you have to go all the way back to, like, Microsoft Access. You gotta go way back to, like, Lotus Notes. It's just like a fully it's over. Like, it's not over for Salesforce, the company. The interface is over, which I think is what you're getting at.
right, whereas people are still using Excel. Like the whole point is the grid, in Excel. And so, any spreadsheet is going to have that because you sort of need it. But when it comes to, a CRM or any of the, sort of extensions of Salesforce, or really any of these systems. I mean, imagine installing an SAP system at a large company. I
Yeah.
used to I used to joke that when you'd get on earnings calls, because as in my former life as an equity research analyst, I'd get on earnings calls all the time, and whenever you'd hear, we're just starting an installation of the SAP system, I'd be like, okay, just short the stock, right? Because that on the next call they're going to say that the costs went too high, we're only halfway through it, and we were supposed to be 3 months in, and it's actually going to be 9 months, and it's going to cost three
So
times as much. And you just knew it. Like,
yeah, so that's so getting back to it. So your alpha was the alpha you had was if they're doing it, you short. But I think what's interesting, what I'm trying to get at is like it's like we're in a fundamental shift. We're probably multiple years out of like real businesses, but I think that the shift is more of a mindset shift of executives because if they treat it like, hey, I'm just rolling out SAP or whatever, they're gonna they're I think they're looking at it wrong because as when you started to work with me on AI practice, you shifted, and I think that like you're like an executive that shifted. I've seen, and I feel like and so you're pilled. Now, I don't
totally.
think if you're running in a big Fortune 500 company, you may have the time to get pilled on it on all this AI stuff, but I think a big chunk of your management team should because then that's going to tell you how to eventually leverage this technology versus sound bites.
100%. One of the best things I read over the last couple of weeks, and I can't attribute it because I don't remember where it came from, but someone, he said, you can't bring in AI and say, can we replace Stacy? You have to bring in AI and say, which of Stacy's 15 different workflows can we automate to free up Stacy to do more meaningful work?
Right.
And I think it's that mindset and this sort of AI first mindset. We were talking a little bit before we started recording here, and I mentioned that I like this woman Cody Sanchez, who's down in Austin, Texas, sort of famous for starting small businesses, getting people to be entrepreneurs of non-sexy businesses.
Yep.
Laundromats is her favorite, I think.
Yeah, like
You know,
painting parking lot
yeah,
lines.
yeah. Things, very simple businesses, but that generate a lot of cash. And she was saying, like, she was talking to a person from Goldman Sachs. So, perfect pedigree. And, she said, like, how do you, use AI now? And the woman's answer was very non-satisfactory, which was, I like to get everyone in a room and do a PowerPoint presentation and then see if we can get real consensus among the team. And, and she said, like, I feel bad for this woman because she's dead.
Yeah.
Uh, and and I get it. And, I said to you, look, my pedigree is phenomenal. Like, it's the ideal pedigree from 30 years ago. Ivy League school and go to Wall Street, work at large funds, I drop all sorts of big names. And today it's like, who gives a shit? What are you building today?
Yeah,
You know,
it's like, Show me your MD files. Let's go. How do you
exactly.
roll?" You know what I mean? And I mean, we're so far pilled that, like, most people that are listening to this podcast are gonna go, "Hey, I don't know what these guys are talking about, and we should probably not listen to their podcast again." Or you're gonna get other pilled people going like, "Yeah, like, these guys are so great. Like, let's listen to them more," right? And I think that that's the problem is, like, we're by following the engineers in the room, we're out ahead of our skis here. That's our alpha. But I do believe that, like, there's going to be headless corporations run by a couple people that are going to finely tune a set of systems that could act like a company greater than two and drive real revenue. We're seeing some of that. We
Yeah.
talked about this guy that was selling medical stuff that New
Yeah.
York Times
MedV,
covered.
I think. Yeah. GLP-1 drugs, the
Yeah,
fat
and
shots.
I think that that's the basic step. I actually think there's going to be I actually think there's going to be much more significant companies doing society real good, but it's going to be run in a way that is not how companies are run today. Period. And by the
No.
way, the sort of like the woman that was saying she needs to get consensus and because she's dealing with a human organization that's run by, perhaps like a lot of like classic MBA management where there's a lot of managers and you do got to get like, cross-functional teams to agree and then you move things forward and blah blah blah. And that just moving humans and getting consensus is literally the largest waste of time corporations have. And
Yeah.
as you reduce headcount, and rely more on sort of like, compute, your consensus happens a lot faster versus the other company. And so I'm not against the labor market. I'm more like the labor market is managed so inefficiently, and it's just slows everything down. It just
Yeah.
does.
I think if you look at AI, it is Clayton Christensen's nightmare come true.
Yeah,
It's you need to reinvent your company, and you need to do it now, and you need to do it at warp speed. Um, because whatever you thought your moat was, chances are good that it's not there anymore. And somebody is going to come and, build a bridge across that moat. And because the bridge is so cheap, they're going to build 100 bridges across the moat. And that's just the reality of life today. And that's going to be really difficult if you're sitting there with a PowerPoint presentation trying to get 50 people in the room to all agree on something. So I think that's going to be really hard. I do also think that, maybe in 2 years, someone might come back and listen to this and say, hey, these guys actually, kind of had it right, hopefully.
yeah,
But I think that's to me, when I go to sit down and write every day, and when I talk to you about this stuff, I think we started this to some degree, or I joined you because and I've said this to you before, I don't know that I've really had too many conversations with you. I've had 0 serious conversations with you where I didn't feel like I was a smarter person at the end of the conversation.
That's very nice to
And
hear.
well, it's true. Alright, so, like, from my end, right? And I wouldn't have done this otherwise. I'm not, I mean, I am somewhat self-interested. So I think I think we all are. So I do think that um, it's an enormous educational opportunity for me. It has been. And I think that when I write the stuff every day, the goal is always the same, which is I want you to give me 5 minutes of your time. I want you to give us 5 minutes of your time. And then ask yourself whether you're smarter for that 5 minutes. And then if you want, go to the website and read 10 minutes and ask yourself if you're smarter. And then, if you really like us, then come listen to the podcast. And hopefully we'll have, ultimately some good guests on, and ask yourself if you're smarter at the end of it. That to me is the hallmark of good writing, good analysis, good podcasting, good conversations. Do you walk out feeling energized, psyched for the future? Or do you walk out going, God, I wish to God I had that hour back because, I only have so many, time's our most precious resource, and I can't believe I just wasted it on that crap.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Which I do all the time, by the way. I do waste time in a pleasurable way watching ridiculous stuff on TikTok and YouTube and Twitter. I have a question for you, because
shoot.
like I'm trying to go to this place where we always hear people saying, you know, AI is going to take your job and stuff like that. And I kind of want to debunk that in a little bit. So if the LLMs that we currently have that we could buy, anyone could buy, are smart enough, and then we also, do we agree that the next most important thing is like how do you manage event sources and orchestrate these agents to do real complex work that pleases the human, or the manager, or the operator? Who then is the most valuable resource or resources in your company, and who are you recruiting to achieve this?
It's a tough question to answer. Because I'm not sure that I'm 100% certain of my answer, but I'll give it a
That's okay.
shot and bullshit here for a while. Um, First of all, I think it's so new that what you really want are generalists who are intellectually curious and who have agency themselves, self-starters, people who are willing to, kind of go down the rabbit hole and try to figure stuff out, as opposed to people who need massive direction, because the truth of the matter is that the AI needs massive direction. It's garbage in, garbage out. You give it
Yep.
great context, it gives you a good answer. You give it crappy context, it gives you a crappy answer. Um, and, it is, it's really important to have people that can manage with not a lot of direction and in a world of, great uncertainty. So, who do I want on my team? I want someone technical who can prepare whatever data that I have to be consumed by agents. That
Yep.
is a given, I think, that agents will consume more data than will the humans. So if you're running an e-commerce site, you'll get hit far more by agents than you will by humans.
But the
If you're
humans,
running,
but the humans, like what I'm getting is, what I'm trying to debunk is, like, I don't think people are going to be losing their jobs. I think this is a perfect time to get the best job in the world, which is like learn how to orchestrate agents. Who on the team knows how to set the architecture and the philosophy of the agents, and know how to run them and operate them,
yeah,
set the roles,
and
manage the
that's not
event
necessarily
stream.
a technical person. That's
No,
actually
it
someone
isn't.
who understands the business.
Yeah, well, that's my point. It's like
Yeah.
it's not. There's an opportunity in the workspace right now where it's not an engineer. it could be someone who just knows how to actually set the roles and manage event streams and
Yeah.
make sure that the output is informing the input of a human or another agent so that you can sell the widget or solve a customer problem. And I feel like when I'm always hearing, and I'm answering the question for you, Harry, is I'm always hearing that AI is going to, destroy jobs. And in the case, it may disrupt the labor force. But there's also the other side of that is there's an amazing point in time right now, which you and I have embraced for years, on how to actually build these workflows and how to make the input and the output and work with another input and output and how to make it come to me. And I'm going like, that's great, Harry. Like those are the most important people to get in the room. Those are the people that you're going to want to hire. And I don't hear that enough where executives could go, oh, now I know what I need to go hire. Now I know
Right.
what to go do with my team. I think it's just like they hear AI is going to take your job or AI, and it's kind of like a defeatist, fatalist point. And I think that that's the wrong thinking. And that's what I wanted you to sort of respond to.
Yeah. I think you have to look at, where you are in your career and say, am I somebody who is effectively a middleman on information? Am I just taking information from point A and shuffling it to point B, or moving it up the ladder with a little bit of, notation on it? Um, I think if you're in that position, yeah, you are going to lose your job, because that's something that can be automated fairly easily. What you said is 100% right. Um, there are a lack of people in these organizations that actually can orchestrate a process, and um, those are the people that are absolutely needed. I mean, again, I asked my daughter this morning because I know what she's working on with her satellite. She's working on the thermal systems, and I said, "There's got to be somebody out there who like sits over all of this and says, here's the full design of the satellite, and I have it in my head, like or I have it on a big drawing somewhere. I know what each system does, what each system needs to talk to." And she goes, "Oh yeah, of course. There's a chief designer and stuff like that, and then each person down the line does their part and fits into that system. So, you know, while they're building the satellite, physically building it, she's getting ready to test it in a couple months. And so she's setting up all the different tests and all the different, data that needs to be collected, et cetera. And so, you know, there's a job to be done. She's the agent. It's like a computer's not taking over that job. They need to put this thing into a vacuum and drop it down to like 80 Kelvin and then slam one
It's a
side of it,
team effort. It's a human
yeah,
team
it's a human.
orchestration
It's
effort.
that's correct, and that's and I think those are the things that are going to be the most valuable to people who actually can understand the bigger picture. And quite frankly, corporations haven't always been run in that way. It's sort of a need to know in many cases. If I think the best companies have always been ones where I'll use the OKR framework,
Yeah.
where if you really drill down on somebody who's run the OKR framework, you could go to anybody in the corporation and say, what are the goals of the company, right? What are the objectives? And each person will be able to say, at the corporate level, it's here. In marketing, it's here, and my role is here, and my key results are this many sales this month, because that rolls up to this larger number, which then rolls up to meeting the objectives of the corporation. And so they, I think they're very empowered at that point, or very scared, take your pick. But they can feel empowered because they know how their job fits into the larger strategic goal of the company. So I know that, for example, I asked the question at breakfast, I got a really good answer from Megan, because she knows exactly what her role is and how it fits into the overall march from here to next fall when they're actually going to drop this thing, at Vandenberg and launch it into space. And then exactly what it's going to do once it gets up into space, the forces that it's going to deal with, and until it sits in its orbit and and starts to study the sun. It's like, so to me, that's exactly what needs to happen at all of these companies, and these managers really need to understand, like, the people that are left after you do your headcount reductions because you can cut out the sort of bureaucratic paper shuffling. Well, they need to be really empowered,
Yeah.
and they need to be given the agency to test things and do things. There was a great story on it was one of those Twitter stories, I believe, and it was talking about how there was a product manager at one of the companies who basically just saw a problem, worked with Claude Code,
Hmm.
fixed the problem. There was no meeting with the engineering team. There was no meeting with the design team. It was the person who was closest to the business problem who said, I now have the tools to just fix the problem. No meetings, no nothing. Just, hey, I pushed this code, problem solved, on to the
Yeah.
next one.
Yeah.
Um,
That happen that happens in engineering circles a lot. You know what I mean? You could just, if you have if
doesn't
you can
happen
get
in
into
business circles.
no, exactly. And you have lots of egos in the business circles.
What, you don't you
Yeah.
don't have you don't have that in the engineering world? You don't
No,
have
you
ego?
do. Absolutely. You have tons of them. Yeah.
I've never met an engineer who didn't say the first thing they would say to me as the business guy is, whoever wrote this did a shitty job, and I think we need to refactor the whole code base, and I could do it better in 2 weeks myself
Yeah,
if
you know what's
only.
great about that guy is it's like, "Hey, here's a 5,000,000 tokens to get it done tomorrow." You know what I mean? It's like,
Right.
so, yeah, we're just I think we're talking around in circles, in a I think a very interesting way, by the way. We're in what I always say, someone asks me, "What am I doing?" I'm like, I'm always just saying like, "Well, I'm trying to become, agentically inclined." But more seriously is like really trying to build our harness and also just thinking about other people's like what do they need? Like what is the orchestration they need? And um,
And
every company has their own everyone has their own way of working. And so I don't think there's going to be like one harness that rules them all. I do think that Claude Code and Cowork is a profound tool that continues to get better as I become more aware of all the tools. Like I think their new dispatch feature, their loop feature is really unlocking me. I think that they also with Claude Code you can add it to your Slack. So in essence, you're talking with it Claude Code via Slack. And I figure that's how we're probably going to start talking to our minis, right? Like, hey, do
well,
this.
I mean, Apple's going to open it all up, right? So we'll be able to just iMessage it, or maybe there'll be a special you know agent messaging system that they build in natively so that they don't clog up their pipes, on the iMessage side. But
Did you read like the iMessage has been such a closed framework, but did you read something specifically that I missed that said that?
yeah, yeah, no, they're going to open up Siri basically. But now a lot of the Siri stuff is
So the,
is can run through messaging also. But yeah, they're gonna open up Siri so that you're gonna be able to access any of the models pretty much. Now, of course, they're going to put up a paywall. I'm quite sure. But yeah, hey, great. I'll take 30% of your subscription. You guys spend $2 trillion to get this, and I'll just act as a toll keeper.
I mean, that's quite possibly the way. I don't know what you think about this, but as we're kind of coming to the end here, but I do think. What do you think about Slack becoming the front end to like this, like a 2 or 3 person company that's got a lot of agents, and all the Slacks that are in there are like really powerful agents that are kind of eventually popping into your head. Like that's the front end. You're not like sitting on top of Claude Code. Claude Code's been instrumented. It's doing its things. It's talking with like real applications that you wrote in Python or Rust, and it's doing stuff. But like when you need to be alerted, it's going to a Slack, someone on your Slack team that's an agent says, "Hey, buddy, can you help me do this, this, and this?" Or can you buy a subscription to this, that, and the other? It seems to me that Slack might be have this really second act or third act as a product in the workspace. What do you think?
I think it's great. I mean, people use it all over the place. I mean, if you think about the way that we message, for example, we text each other a lot. We
Yeah.
don't email each other very much.
No,
Um, we don't Slack very much, but quite frankly, it's
it's just
open.
us. So we're just slacking. We just text each other.
Yeah, but but yeah, look, it's open on my computer at all times. It's on my phone at all times. It's really easy. Um, it's persistent, and you can actually add all these people as as agents effectively. Um, so yeah, I think it's a I think it's a good system. And if you could then go in and sort of tweak your agents' inputs and outputs as you're going by, sort of
I think so. I mean,
talking to them, individually, then it's sort of an interesting context switch, right? Because right now I have to go in and say, if I'm working, I literally just have to go from project to project or chat to chat or, remember which one it is and say, okay, like I'm going to work in this folder now versus working in that folder.
exactly. Yeah.
If I could all of a sudden get rid of that and just say, hey, do it here.
Well, that's what I'm
Um,
thinking. That's what I've been thinking. It's like you get you have like you have I'm just going to use classic HR stuff. You have your HR, and that has a project, and that has a bunch of MDs that you've given it. So the HR project really understands what it's supposed to do, and it appears to you in Slack as an HR agent, and you can just sit there and keep telling it what to do and wanting to do. And if there's eventually you want to change her soul file, if you will, or her constitution, then you go deeper and do that. But like day to day interaction, I feel like I need something higher level. That's not,
yes.
and that's where I've been sort of like thinking, because a lot of that's not been thought through, and I feel like a lot of companies need that layer where it's like, fine, I've bought into your guys' orchestration, but I'm certainly not sitting in Claude Cowork jumping from project to project to project. Just get the project set up and then give me an overlay and let if a phone call comes in or a lead comes in, it knows exactly how it's processed. But I'm talking to it like it's like they're people on my team.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. The one thing I would say is Slack might have to re-architect the way that their screens work a little bit. The chat is fine. The sort of the left-hand bar is fine. The chat and on the right-hand side,
Mhm.
the middle is fine. But they're going to have to figure out how to render outputs or give me a window to render outputs. One thing I
Artifacts. You're gonna need
artifacts,
artifacts.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's exactly
yeah,
right. Right now,
yeah. So
it doesn't really handle those the way that you would like to for maximum efficiency.
yeah, they don't do file like that's been the problem with Slack is like it's really great for like chatting it, but then it starts becoming like a file system and a knowledge base. So it's like, so I think we're gonna continue to build our harness and Harry, you're kind of got your own, I got my own. We'll let everyone know on the podcast how we make the move to like having full-time AI appliances in our houses and figure out how to make them work. Um, it's I think if you're not doing this, you're crazy. But we're like I said, we're so pilled that we might be, way out ahead of our skis. And just feel justified in this position. But I don't see another way of modern business moving forward without this
I
sort of
don't
stuff.
I don't I don't either. And I'm happy. I'm happy for it. It's like I've done lots of jobs in my life, and I got to say that I always had a really fond spot for equity research when I was doing it because I got to write and talk to interesting people, meet interesting people, and then write a lot of stuff. And with CoAI and another uh, newsletter that I sort of booted up called That's Rich that
Which we
I've
got to
started
work
to
on.
just start to work on. The writing daily has been a blessing for me. I really enjoy doing it. I enjoy the research on it every day. I enjoy the intellectual stimulation of tying things together, learning from people who are, smarter than I am at their subject matter, and then putting it all together and hopefully making everyone who reads it and everyone who listens a little smarter as a result. And I think that's a, you couldn't ask for more, if that's your daily life, doing something that you really enjoy.
Yeah.
And at the same time, hopefully helping some people, and hopefully at the same time, ultimately, making a few bucks, and which allows you to just do it for as long as you are, intellectually stimulated and are valuable to the community. And I think, I've always said, I know you agree, is that, AI is the single greatest transformational technology that I think that I will probably ever see in my life in terms of flattening knowledge. There is literally nothing that I feel that I can't learn and or build or do, and that just shouldn't be the case historically, right?
Yeah.
You
It's
don't you don't you don't get to like your mid to late 50s and go, "Yeah, I think I'm going to learn about, astrophysics." And I'm quite sure that I could learn a lot about astrophysics now,
y-
like just sitting here every day if I put my mind to it. And that was almost unattainable, or it would be very, very difficult if I went back 15 or 20 years.
yeah, and it came at a perfect timing, because Google search just sucks, right? It's just an absolute, like, it's riddled with just junk and lost links, and it's just so I really do think AI on just multiple levels, the LLM architecture, and we don't really talk about the transformers and how it's making image data and video data, but it is, yeah, I think it's transformational. In like, we just won't even be like, we won't be around in 50 years to see what is transformed. Do you know what I
We
mean?
might be. You just check out all the advances in longevity. I
That's
mean,
true.
we may all just be, like
Well, if I am,
our bodies will
I
be replacement parts, but the
well,
brain might still be going.
totally. Well, we maybe by then, we'll be doing a podcast. We'll be doing our 100,000th podcast. So,
Yeah. Here's the other interesting thing I would leave you with then, is, and just to get back to the, you're not going to lose your job or whatever it is. Human judgment, taste, for lack of a better word, is not going away. As long as we're building for humans, human communication, human enjoyment, human entertainment, etc. Those things are not going away. I have a skill that I run, daily when we're doing our co-AI, signal to noise reports, and it is basically just a header image, right?
yep,
And the skill basically tells Claude to either take a picture from me that I give it, so it kind of cuts it off, but I ask it for three concepts, and based on the theme of the piece. So after I've written the piece, after it is sort of locked and loaded and ready to be published, I ask it for, um, three themes, three descriptions. And I would say, since I've been running that, I think I've only used their themes once. And
right.
and it's not because they're bad, because they're not bad. It's because I think that at the end of the day, I probably have better taste and a better
Of
and a
course.
clearer understanding of what I want the output to be. And by the way, I don't let Claude make the image because it's not great at that. We send that directly over to Nano Banana at Google, which does a great job. And then, and you had come up with a style, with this two-tone style that was really nice. And so I really, I kind of love the process there. And usually it gets it right, like, the first time, which
I
is,
mean,
it's unbelievable to me.
your latest piece, for people that want to go, if you go to Get AI, there's one called the Mac Mini sold out. And the image that you put in there is just like, I completely get the reference. And your piece made me laugh because you wrote like, the future's bright as long as you like being alone. And you were getting at, like, you could be a solopreneur and be working alone and doing this, and so the guy's on the beach. The image just is cool, right? And I think we've kind of got to a visual
What
style.
I told it was I wanted Tom Hanks from Castaway sitting at a desk on, like on the beach on a computer with Wilson, his, his volleyball friend, sitting there next to him. And so, the AI kind of said, well, I can't give you that image because it's, copyrighted, but I can give you something very close, and I can give you Wilson, but I'm not going to give you the, it's kind of the bloody handprint on it, but I'll give you a chatbot, kind of window there
Yeah.
to mimic it. But I think, if you're of a certain age and you've seen the movie, you'll just immediately get it.
Yeah.
And if you haven't, it still works,
Still
which
works.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, which is great. But to have the computer kind of one shot that thing like kind of every time is pretty amazing to me. I don't know, maybe our standards aren't high enough or something. I don't know. I like them though. So I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you know what?
we've gotten some feedback that people like it. So
Yeah,
I think we recommend people go to the daily briefings and read. Harry's been tearing it up. I wrote a piece that I think is kind of interesting. On Claude Code, and it's sort of 100,000 stars in 24 hours. I wrote an article, a piece in there about the guys that are making that, and there's some good stuff in there. I mean, I feel like I feel like I want to go back and re-edit it, but I wanted to get it out, and so that's in our essay section where we do some long form stuff, and of course you're hearing this, the podcast will be on under podcast stuff. And I think you're going to be doing a bunch of podcast reviews that are coming out next for us, right?
yeah. That's sort of the next project. One of the I don't I don't have a commute like, you do out in LA where you get in a car and, if you get in that car, you're going to be in that car for an hour. And so it's sort of like the perfect time to listen to podcasts or,
Yeah.
the guys who do what I used to do, which was, commute in on a train to the New York City, have an hour train ride. So, again, great 2 hours a day for that. Um, some of my favorite podcasts are sometimes run 2 to 3 hours. And
Yep.
I just don't have 2 to 3 hours to sit with headphones on listening. I have just other stuff to do. So we've put together a bunch of skills that I like to say, kind of extract the, 5 to 10 minutes of signal from every hour of noise. And then we summarize, we sort of get the transcripts, we summarize them, we interrogate them, we sort of go through them as if we were listening and were a participant and talk to the transcripts, and kind of come back with a pretty interesting read on a lot of them. So I have a lot of them stored up. Great. All the good ones from all the great AI ones. From the 20 VC type guys to the A16Z podcasts, et cetera, et cetera. Really interesting stuff, chock full of tidbits. You learn every time you listen to them. I think you learn every time you read them. You do lose a little of the kind of the human voice and the
Yeah.
nuance and
Yeah. I
some of the
mean,
stuff, which is it's just the price you pay for convenience, I think.
yeah. And I've been thinking about, often a lot of these guys put them up on YouTube. So there could be a way that when we get that little sort of podcast agent kind of working, it could also find the exact spots where it's like, hey, no, just click here and listen to this for 5 minutes. You know what I mean? So you can kind of get our readout, but you could also just go right to the place on the YouTube video, and that you can kind of listen to it. So that's coming.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I think it's someone said, and this is a while ago, and I think it was maybe around a Malcolm Gladwell podcast that I listened to, because I've read all of his books, like his stuff, and it was sort of like, if you think you might be interested, like get the transcript and read it for like 5 or 10 minutes, or in this case, read the extract,
yep.
and then if you like that, maybe read the transcript, and if you really like that, then maybe listen, and then if you really get into that, then go buy the book and actually spend it's no longer an hour. You're now in for 10 hours of reading or something like
Yeah.
that. And it sort of gives you a way to, get yourself into it, expose yourself to it, um, get the couple big themes. I mean, I've now run this system on enough podcasts where I kind of know what I'm going to get out of it. And it's really it's really interesting. Very, very, very few people have enough density of signal that they can come up with more than, let's say, 4 or 5 main themes that they're trying to hit on in an hour.
You should try it on ours to see what signal we
It's gonna
actually
score
produce.
us like at a 4 or something like that. It's gonna be I score them, 0 to 10. So no, I will. I'll certainly do it. There's no absolutely no reason not to. But
Yeah.
it is really it's a really interesting and good system. I've seen a couple of them where there are multiple guests and they start to range all over the map in terms of interesting conversations. They're really smart. Peter, the X Prize guy, Peter, I can always never pronounce his last name.
Peter Diamandis.
Diamandis, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I always want to say Diomedes.
It
Diamandis.
probably is. You could probably say that and just, yeah.
Yeah, as long as you're paying him, he's probably fine. His podcast is fantastic, right? Like, he's an incredibly smart guy. He gets incredibly smart, great guests on. We should be so lucky as to come close to that over time.
Yeah,
And
he's a well-established guy.
yeah, but for a reason, right? There is an incredibly high level of signal to noise in that podcast, and so I actually had to rewrite some of the scripts so I could actually capture all of it because I would I sort of listened to them and then I'd write the script and then I'd listen and I'd look at the output and go, wait, but you missed this one, you missed this, and you missed this, and there's actually 7 great themes here, not
Right.
3. So
yeah.
yeah, and you know it as a human having spent the hours because that's the only way you can really build the system, right? Is to say, if these are all the things that I would extract having spent 3 hours listening, how do I give that to somebody in 10 minutes? And if it's missing important stuff, then you're like, yeah, I'm not doing the right job. I'm not doing a good job by them. But I think we're doing a good job by them now. So it's ready and it's ready to start popping out.
So we'll start publishing, and maybe next week when we do our podcast, we can mention some of them and give an update there. But
yeah,
and then by this time next week, you'll probably have your Mac Mini running something. We can give an update on that.
I better.
Yeah.
So.
Well, listen, it's have a happy Easter, everyone that's listening. Go to Get.co.ai. You can get on our mailing list. We will we'll be keeping everyone updated on all the agent architectures that we're exploring and how we're using them. And also, we have an open call to other executives that end up listening to this podcast to reach out to us, because we've talked to some. And they're all, we know that a lot of you guys are struggling on like how to do it. We also know that no one likes to admit they're struggling. So give us a call and we'll point you in the right direction. No problem. Or send us an email. We're all available via all the social networks. So that's it. Until then, we'll see you guys next week, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Good talk.
Be safe, buddy.
Yep. Talk to you soon.